Myths are not stories that are untrue. Rather, they are tales that don't fit neatly into the historical record, which serve as a foundation to a culture. It is said that in hell, there is a great beast, known as the Horerczy. And so large is this abomination that the shape-shifting demons known as Alps are birthed inside of its mouth, spewed into the world in the form of butterflies. But when these troll-like creatures take their true form, they become architects of nightmare and sleep paralysis. Though when they experience defeat at the hands of mankind, they return to the creature's mouth where they were born, which I kind of like to envision as a devilish speakeasy of sorts, to make it fun. And it is there that these foul creatures lick their wounds, insult each other, and occasionally punch one another in the face. A hellish good time can be had by all. And the only price of admission is a good story. This tale is sponsored by Knights of Pen and Paper 2. Check out all the pixelated RPG hijinks at the link below. One dark day, inside the Horerczy's mouth, a rather dejected-looking Alp walked in. With his head hung low, he silently moved past the many other raucous demons, all laughing and joking and throwing the occasional punch. Then, an oddly blue-skinned Alp noticed the sad sack and approached him.
You just left! Why are you back so soon?
He taunted. In response, the returning Alp said,
Oh, I shapeshifted into this farmer's house last night. The entire family was asleep, so I worked the bedrooms. I drank some of the wife's blood, which was tasty, and then I climbed on the father's chest to give him nightmares, and the fear coming off him was delicious. After I'd had my fill, I left the house and fell asleep next to a tree, as you do. And when I woke the next morning, I realized I'd lost my tarnkippa.
For the uninitiated, a tarnkippa is a small, almost comical-looking hat that serves as a source of much of an Alp's magical power. So you can imagine that losing it would be a serious problem.
So I shapeshifted into a human form to retrieve it. I went back to the house, but that damn farmer, he said he knew what I was for my single eyebrow. And then before I knew it, he'd raised the whole village and chased me off.
At this point in his tale, a group of other Alp demons had formed around them and began laughing and mocking.
Unibrow lost his tarnkippa! Unibrow lost his tarnkippa!
And this went on until a noticeably bigger Alp stepped forward.
Fools!
The Alpha Alp chastised.
We've all lost our tarnkippa at one point, and we all have unibrows when we shapeshift into human form. The true strength of an Alp is not found in avoiding mishaps, but in the chaos we can cause in recovering from them.
Not one demon in the rowdy group dared to challenge the Alpha Alp, because due to his devilish deeds, he was considered one of the greatest of their kind. Long ago, he had once befriended a Protestant midwife and healer who had the misfortune of being born in Würzburg, Germany in the 1600s. At that time, German Catholics were using the threat of witchcraft as an excuse to execute anyone who wasn't Catholic. And when the harmless midwife was burnt at the stake and then beheaded, this Alp went for full-on revenge. He shapeshifted his way into the monastery, found the bishop that ordered his friend killed, and then sat down on the bishop's chest while he slept and compelled him to dream of his own execution. He held the bishop in this state of sleep paralysis and unwaking nightmare for so long that his heart burst from the hours of psychological torture. The blueskin Alp chimed in again, this time with a more sympathetic tone.
Well, it is better to be chased away early than to be trapped by the humans.
And he spoke from experience. Years before, this blue Alp saw firsthand what happened when they linger somewhere too long. Initially, he was having a great time visiting a farmhouse he'd found, feeding off of the family and their livestock. But one day, while the blue Alp rested, the farmer plugged up the mouse hole he had used to enter the home in an attempt to keep the Alp out. But the rub was, he was still in the house, and an Alp can only exit a house the way he entered. So, he was trapped inside. Eventually, he escaped his captors, but only after he made the family miserable by not only plaguing their sleep with nightmares, but also killing all of their plants and constantly switching out fresh baby diapers on their infants with previously soiled ones. After a few days of that, the family realized their mistake and unplugged the hole so the Alp could leave, which he promptly did. Laughed a somewhat dapper Alp wearing a bow tie from across the room.
At least when you were caught, you weren't forced to stay and raise a family.
The dapper Alp admitted that his first mistake was shapeshifting into a cat.
While it did allow me to sneak into the house, the smaller form left me much more vulnerable.
The dapper Alp had been feeding off of the fears his nightmares were giving a Polish farmhand for over a month, but he went back one too many times. One night, as he fed, another farmhand laying in a nearby bed awoke and noticed his friend suffering. Realizing that the cause must be a dark creature's influence, he sealed all possible exits the creature could use to escape. Now trapped, the dapper Alp decided to shapeshift and appear to them as a beautiful human woman the next morning. He knew if he could trick them into fighting over this human woman form, he could escape in the ensuing chaos. But the plan backfired when one of the farmhands lost interest. So now the dapper Alp was trapped in this lie, still not being able to leave, and certainly not being able to reveal he was actually an Alp for fear of being killed. This complicated lie lasted for years. Long enough for the dapper Alp in his human woman form to marry the farmhand and to give him 3 children before at last tricking him and escaping.
You have done well,
The Alpha Alp said to the dapper Alp.
Those children will eventually find their way here to the mouth of the Horerczy. They too shall find nourishment in the suffering of man, the way we have for centuries.
As the other Alps cheered at the prospect of new demons, the Tarnkapalis Alp began to leave.
Ho-ho! Where are you going, brother?
The Alpha Alp called out. Emboldened, he replied,
I'm going to get my hat back. No human should ever have sway over me. I'll give the entire town night terrors if I have to.
The Alpha Alp stood tall.
Yes, we will go with you, brother. We will feast on the blood and fear. Just let me settle my tab real quick. I'll be right behind you.
More cheers filled the mouth of the Horerczy as the mob of Alps headed out of hell to the world above. And later that night, a dark shadow fell over a small farming town in Germany as terrified screams from every house filled the midnight air. For the last time, Zoe, I am not an Alp. This doesn't prove anything. Once again, thanks so much to our sponsors for this episode, Knights of Pen and Paper 2, the quintessential turn-based satirical pixel art experience that simulates a tabletop role-playing game in very silly ways, which is perfect for me when my IRL RPG group is too tired to meet up due to Alp attack. Oh hey, new virtual friends! You know, I always did want to hang out with a surfer dwarf cleric. Gnarly! Sorry. Plus, it's free on iOS and Android, so you can amass a bunch of virtual loot without sacrificing anything but your playtime tapping snarky monsters to death. So if that sounds up your alley, check out the game at the link below. Legendary thanks to Ahmed Ziad Turk, Casey Muscha, Dominic Valenciana, Gunnar Clovis, Kyle Murgatroyd, and Oriels1